My name is Katie Marsan, and I am here to tell you about an elementary art teacher's perspective of the Whitney Museum of American Art. I plan on talking about the founding of the museum, the resources available on the website, curriculum connections, and my ultimate impression of the museum in regards to large universal survey museums. The Whitney Museum of American Art is physically located in New York City. It prominently features American art from the 20th century with an emphasis on contemporary living artists. The Whitney has a history of purchasing art in the first year it was created, and has made famous many contemporary artists such as Cindy Sherman, Jasper Johns, and Nam June Paik. The museum showcases not only sculptures and paintings, but also video, performance art, architecture, and new media. Exhibitions go through a frequent rotation at the Whitney. In addition to smaller exhibitions, there exists a biennial exhibition that displays the work of up-and-coming artists, as well as a large permanent collection of American 20th century art. The Whitney has a large online presence and aims to educate the public with photographs, articles, podcasts, video, and much more, as we will look at later. The museum was born by the sculptor Gertrude Vanderbilt Whitney as a response to a nearly non-existent market in the United States for American artists in the early 20th century. In order to combat the challenges these artists faced, Whitney opened up her own studio to feature American artists in the 20th century. As she amassed more and more art, Whitney offered to sell her collection to the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. After her offer was rejected, Whitney decided to open up her own museum instead of giving up. The Whitney was finally opened in 1931 in Greenwich Village. The museum has expanded over the years and changed sites. It currently hosts corporate-funded smaller branch museums around New York City, as well as the main building in Manhattan. The website of the Whitney is a well-designed tool for education, especially if you don't live close enough to visit the Whitney. Scrolling through at the top, you see the tabs Visit, Exhibitions, Events, Art and Artists, Learn, and Shop. We are going to start today at the Exhibitions tab. If we click on the current and upcoming exhibitions, as an elementary art teacher, I am most drawn to the Grant Wood exhibit at the top where it says Grant Wood, American Gothic and Other Fables. One click on this and you get a summary that describes the context of Grant's work, describing the upheaval of the Depression and Grant Wood's feelings of estrangement and identity in Midwestern America. The online exhibition features images of a wide variety of Grant's works, from portraits to early landscapes, murals, prints, drawings, late work, and much more. Once you click on these icons, it brings you to a separate screen. One of the pieces that drew my eye was this corncob chandelier. One can find quite a bit of information right next to each of these pieces, and upon clicking the rest, you can find a lot of information about the context and purpose of each of Grant Wood's pieces of artwork. We can further explore the exhibition by clicking further on these tabs. One can see a multitude of portraits that Grant has created. And again, scrolling up to the top, you see an explanation of each of the pieces, the context, and the year that it was made. One of the features of the website that I particularly enjoy is they have audio guides. The audio guides exist not only for Grant Wood's work, but for the other exhibitions as well. When I click Listen Now, it brings me to a screen that shows a lot of Grant Wood's work. So there's that corncob chandelier that we looked at earlier. Because American Gothic is one of Grant Wood's most notable works, I'm going to click on that first.
When asked what American Gothic was about, Wood often said that it was really about architecture. This answer was typical of him. He didn't like to give much away, but it's true that the starting point was the house in the background. With a Gothic-style window, that seemed out of sync with its simple construction. The house seemed to him typically American. He later used his dentist and his sister Nan in separate sittings as the models for this couple. To hear about why this painting may have captured so many viewers' imaginations, please tap to continue.
As a busy teacher, I could see myself using these audio guides to further explain art history to my students in an engaging manner. If we go back to the Exhibitions tab and click on Grant Wood once again, we already visited the audio guide section. Under Watch, there are some YouTube videos that can further explain art history. I'm going to click on this video right here.
American Gothic is probably the most famous, celebrated American work of the 20th century. It appears in countless parodies of individuals from across the political spectrum. Viewers will be totally surprised when they see the range of Grant Wood's work. I think this undercurrent of disquiet that really infuses the work, this kind of airless silence and frozen quality, is very much part of contemporary life. His pictures speak to that sense of apprehension and isolation that we all feel as modern Americans. We're in an age right now where we're also examining core national values, where there's a division between rural and urban America, and Wood's work represents that. There was something about American Gothic. It is an image of a kind of America that maybe never existed, but existed in the imagination of what it meant to be American.
Not only does the website feature podcasts and videos, but it also has great materials for teachers and students. It's a little hard to find, but if you go under Learn and click page 12, we're going to start with the teacher's guide. So if you click on for teachers, teacher guides, there is a variety of information. So I'm going to go to Grant Wood once again. And this information, while it's geared towards grades 6 through 12, could be simplified for an elementary classroom. We have a lot of information for visiting the museum, but I could see a lot of these guides could be used as like discussion questions before looking at a presentation, PowerPoint presentation, or much more. So I'm just going to flip through this. Sometimes it's really helpful to have all of this information in one place. Now, one of the most useful things that I have found on this website is they also have student guides. This is found in the family section of the Learn tab. And if we scroll down, we can see a kids activity guide. This is especially useful for kids grades K through 5. So I'm going to click on this, and I could see this being an early finisher activity, as well as just a activity that could be used at the beginning of a longer project on Grant Wood. So I'm just going to scroll through here so you can get a good look at what this resource could be for you. In this worksheet, it has students look at Grant Wood's Lilies of the Alley sculpture and has them create an unusual plant of their own. And you can see that there's an easy start to a drawing right here. In this one, students look at the Van Antwerp Place painting made by Grant Wood, and they use their critical thinking skills to draw what they might see behind the painting. This one gets students to look at American Gothic and connect it to their 21st century lives. So it says to draw a portrait of the people who you might imagine living in this house today. What are they wearing? What objects are they holding? What's the difference between that and the 1930s American Gothic? I love this one. It has the students look at Parson Weems' fable, which talks about George Washington's mistake cutting down the cherry tree, and it asks students to draw their own story about something naughty that they have done. And I can see students getting really creative with that one. And this is connecting this history to students' current lives, having students imagining they are riding a horse through the town at night and writing a few words that describe their ride, connecting literature to artwork. This one has students draw or write what they think this boy might be thinking while he's milking the cow, judging by the expression on his face. I think this holds a lot of social emotional learning in addition to art, history, and education. And then this has students look for modern formalist elements in the artwork, looking for pattern, shape, and details. Again, having students use their creative problem-solving skills to draw their own imaginary aisle or imaginary place, just as Grant Wood did. And overall, I just really think that this connects to children's lives and allows them to further explore. If I go back, there's another activity guide for Where We Are, one of the exhibits at the museum. And I personally am going to check back in this tab because I just think that this is super useful for teachers. Here I am at the Learn section. I went to K-12 once again. I clicked on for teachers and activities. And these activities are mostly for older students, but a few of them seemed to work for elementary students. So I'm going to click on the second page. At the top here, I see the circus, and there's a video, and it just has some teacher questions to guide students looking at Alexander Calder's circus. And an activity in response to the circus is for students to create their own wire sculptures. So it just gives art teachers some good ideas in lesson plans that connect to art history. So we've already checked out the Learn tab and the Exhibitions tab. I'm going to now click on the Art and Artist tab. If we go to the collection, it shows all of the artwork that is featured at the Whitney Museum of American Art. Some of it is more kid-friendly than others. And you can see that there is quite a bit. There's 348 pieces featured permanently at the Whitney that is online. There's more that are actually there. If we go to the Art and Artist tab, and if we go to the Art and Artist tab, and so we've already looked at collection, next I would like to click on the audio guides, and these are audio guides not only for the current exhibitions, but for individual artists and artworks. What I love about this is that they have these audio guides in Spanish, and it also tells you if it is for kids, which is really useful for elementary art teachers. So I'm going to click on the Stuart Davis for Kids audio guide, and we're just going to go to the introduction.
Hi, welcome to the Whitney. Today we're going to look at paintings by Stuart Davis. To start, let's imagine what it was like when he began painting, about 100 years ago. Try to remember a time from your own life when everything seemed totally new and exciting, like you just found out something amazing existed and you never even imagined it before. In the 1920s, almost everything seemed like that. Cars, electricity, things made in factories, and Davis's very favorite, jazz music. Davis thought it seemed wrong to paint all these new things in the same way people had painted for hundreds of years. He began to experiment, using abstract shapes and bright colors. He made modern paintings that matched the energy of the world around him. Let's go take a closer look.
So as you can see, the Whitney uses music and again gets students to really think about their lives in comparison to um, artists' lives that lived a long time ago. I'm here at the Learn section where I clicked on Community, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the Whitney's role in the community. The Whitney demonstrates its goal to educate the public through its extensive involvement with the community. The museum offers classes teaching the public how to interpret art, artist lectures, guided visits and museum tours, children's art workshops, and open studios. The museum often accommodates those with disabilities. It offers ASL tours as well as tactile tours for the blind. Families with children on the autism spectrum are invited to special art classes. The museum offers free tours for immigrant families that may not be fluent in English. The museum also partners with We Can, Whitney Education Community Advisory Network, to bring art out into the community. Because the Whitney focuses on American artists and not those from other nations, it does speak to the museum as a symbol of the state. Praising the successes of only other Americans creates a sense of pride in one's country. Despite the museum only featuring American artists, it features untrained folk artists and artists with a wide variety of cultural heritage within the country, such as Mexican American artists and African American artists. The works of art are not simply created or displayed to praise the United States, but to appreciate the revolutionary ideas and meanings found in the artwork. The Whitney would not be a survey museum due to the lack of art from other time periods and countries. There is a heavy emphasis on education via podcasts, activity books, classroom collaborations, classes, tours, accommodations for those with special needs, and also community ventures. The museum clearly tries to bridge the gap between the general public and art. The museum seems more like a community resource than anything else. Art in this museum is very content driven. So if we look at our exhibitions and look at a lot of the ones we didn't get a chance to look at, a lot of the pieces seem to value content and context. So it's not necessarily blindly following formalist modernism. Every piece is explained and using themes. So if we click on this exhibit, it talks about a history of protest through art, and again, it shows every single piece describes the context and meaning and purpose behind the artwork. There is definitely social and historical context embedded in the artwork at this museum. If we go to the Learn tab, down to K-12, what I found interesting, we have to click on For Teachers. In the Connect to Your Classroom tab, it talks about themes found at the Whitney, and these include artist as observer, artist as storyteller, artist as experimenter, artist as critic, and it encourages teachers to use these themes in their classroom, and I really think it connects art to 21st century Common Core standards. I get the sense that the Whitney Museum of American Art really wants students to feel not only proud of the artists in their country, but also to understand and be able to critique artwork and connect it to their own lives. This is Katie Marsan on the Whitney Museum. Thank you for listening.